The Florida Gators are going to have an uphill battle to upset Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin tomorrow in Gainesville, but they can get it done.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever it's in the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Friday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI.com. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also, a quick reminder, I don't know if we'll be going live immediately following the game tomorrow. I'm going to be away from home, so I'll be in an area that's maybe not great service. We'll see how it is over there. But we will have something after the game. I'm just not sure if it'll be live or recorded and then posted. So just letting you guys know right there that might not be live immediately after the game, but we will have something after, hopefully, a Florida Gators win. But in order to get that win, I think the biggest thing you have to do is be sustainable. And I've talked about that a lot this week, multiple times this week. We talked about it on the SEC squad and the crossover yesterday with Stephen Willis. We will be talking about this throughout the offseason of, is this a sustainable way to play football where only one SEC offense converts less first downs than Florida? And that's Oklahoma, which is widely thought of as the worst, one of the worst, if not the worst, offense in the SEC. And only one SEC defense allows more first downs than Florida, and that's Mississippi State, which is widely thought of as one of the worst, if not the worst, defense in the SEC. You see the company that you're keeping right now? It's not sustainable. Mostly on offense, but most of that is on offense. But that's where DJ Lagway needs to take that next step. I've talked about it before where I don't think he's good at taking the underneath stuff, which, again, he's a true freshman. Like, for a true freshman, he's playing really damn well, okay? He's got a great deep ball, one of the best deep balls in the country, if not the best deep ball in the country. He's allowed to fling it, yeah, absolutely. And he can use his legs better than most quarterbacks can. He's not, I don't think he's, the most athletic quarterback. Like, he's not Anthony Richardson. That's not going to be his game. He's not Jaden Daniels. That's not going to be his game. But if he can be a runner to the effect of, I don't want to say Cam Newton, because Cam Newton was generational, but if he could be a runner to the effect of KJ Jefferson from 2 years ago, who was just plowing through people, picking up first downs, getting into the end zone. Like, if you can do that while also being one of the best deep passers in the country, your offense can really be great. And right now, we haven't seen him use his legs to that extent, partially because Billy Napier wants to keep him healthy because there's no quarterback depth, partially because DJ Lagway last week against LSU was not healthy. But DJ Lagway this week against just tremendous LSU defense. Let's call it, Ole Miss defense. Let's call it what it is. DJ Lagway needs to either take those underneath passes and be accurate with it. He keeps throwing them off platform. And when you've got a big arm and you're throwing off platform, that's great when you're throwing deep balls. You got more time for a receiver to get under it, more time for a receiver to adjust, all that. But we've seen it where DJ Lagway will be moving and then he'll try to hit it to someone, 6 yards away. We've all seen the Georgia game. It was Arliss right over the middle of the field on a key conversion, and he just threw it too high for Arliss to catch it. And things like that can't be a habit. And right now they are a habit, which, again, he's a true freshman. He's going to develop. He's going to get significantly better. We know that DJ Lagway has generational potential, but in order to take a step towards that, he needs to take this next step as a passer. Find the underneath receiver and hit him in stride, or if he's spotted up, basically, hit him there. But you need to find the underneath receiver and be able to move the ball that way. Or If he's not going to do that, because again, and this is something that I've talked about this week also, that's not really something that I expect to see the change be made during the season. Because a lot of it I do think is mechanical. I think he's throwing off platform. He's throwing from an off kilter spot and is throwing the ball off. So I think that that's more something that he has to look at in the offseason to develop and improve there. However, what you can change during the season is use your legs more to compensate. Use your legs to pick up 4 or 5 yards. Like use your legs to just do that, because you're going to have the run game, which we'll talk about a bit later. But you're going to have the run game. You will have the deep passing game, even if, and here's the thing, Ole Miss, I very much believe, is going to try to take that away. I do think you'll see more quarters coverage. I think you'll see 2-man, and you're going to see Ole Miss try to take those away. That's where DJ needs to use his legs. Because if they're playing, let's say they're playing 2-man, if they're playing 2-man, which is 2 safeties over top and then man coverage underneath with 4 rushers, linebackers, DBs, they're going to have their backs turned at some point, right? That's when you have to take off and make them pay. If they're playing quarters, that's 4 over top, 3 underneath. There's space to move and maneuver and run. You've got to make them pay at that point. Like that's when DJ Lagway's legs have to be a part of the offense. And that's what we need to look at as well of taking that next step. That's something I do think that you can take the next step of during the season. Get a little comfortable, get going. And again, also, he's shown that he's willing to run. Last week, he didn't run because he's still, I guess, dealing with the hamstring at the time, which we were told is a bone bruise, so it's not as bad as it initially thought. Got to see that. But I firmly believe that if you figure out ways to keep the offense on the field more, the defense will improve on a per play basis. Like obviously, if the offense is on the field more, then the defense allows less passing yards, less rushing yards, less first downs, because there's less opportunities to screw up. But I think that if you could keep the offense on the field more, you won't see any of those stretches like we saw in the back half against Georgia, where they just started ripping these long drives and long runs and chunk plays. And I don't think you see that as much. So I think that if you can keep the offense on the field just a little bit more, I'm not saying to become all of a sudden a top flight offense in the nation, but I am saying that if you can just keep the offense on field a little longer, sustain these drives a little longer, pick up a few more first downs, that goes a long way towards your defense to be able to handle an Ole Miss offense that's really freaking good. And I mean really good. Like this is maybe Florida's toughest opponent that they've played so far in terms of when they're actually healthy. Because you look at the Texas game and it's like, well, Texas, you were never really winning that game once DJ Lagway went down, right? Like once DJ Lagway went down, it's like, okay, you're going to lose this game. Texas might be the best team that you played, but you didn't have a chance once DJ Lagway went down. Georgia, you had a chance, you were leading, and then that's when DJ Lagway got hurt. So you kind of lost that one. And so when looking at Florida's schedule this year and who they've played, I think that you've got a pretty good case of saying that this is the best offense that they face, but also this is one of the best offenses in the entire country. So that's not surprising. You can, of course, say, hey, just shut down a pretty productive LSU offense, but different styles, and they get it done in different ways, and Ole Miss gets it done in a much better way. We will talk about this Ole Miss offense, which, yeah, pretty good. I'm not going to lie to you. Pretty good. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Gators. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. So if you think Justin Jefferson will have more than 84.5 yards, you pick more. If you think, I don't know, who are we thinking? Malik Neighbors will have more than 4.5 catches, then you pick more there, and then you combine those, and that's how PrizePicks works. You sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. guaranteed. So PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. The other day they had Steph Curry more than half a point. Obviously, he did that. He was playing against the Hawks, and they are terrible defending point guards because Trae Young is not good at basketball. Just saying. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And I don't know if you guys have ever looked at what I wear during these shows, which, by the way, Florida Gators fans are the only people that are going to like my wardrobe. But I wear a lot of Florida Gators gear for these shows, right? I wear a lot of Florida Gators gear just walking around. And I get most of my shirts from Home Field Apparel because, oh my God, they're the most comfortable shirts that I have, whether I'm talking Florida, any sports, or no sports. The most comfortable, the best way to represent the Florida Gators wherever you may go. They got hats, they got shirts, they got sweatpants. I don't know why I said hats like that, but I said hats like that. They've got a ton of schools too. It's not just Florida. So if you're listening to this with a friend or spouse and you like another school, they're probably on homefieldapparel.com. You can use code GATOR24 to save 15% with homefieldapparel.com. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free reps in the podcast and on YouTube. And I think that the Florida Gators offense, or I think the Florida Gators defense needs to make Ole Miss play an ugly game. And again, this is, I mean, Stephen Willis called it a rock fight yesterday on the crossover. We've someone in the insiders, I think it was Zach, said, hey, you know what? You got to make them play Kentucky football. Because Kentucky, the way that they win games or stay close in games is just make it ugly. And that's what Florida has to do to win this game, I think, at least with Ole Miss's offense. Ole Miss might have the cleanest offense that Florida's faced all season long, right? They're really good. In terms of EPA per play, they're sixth in the country. Offensively, they're second in the country. EPA per play, right? Offensive passing success, fifth in the country. They're really good, right? The EPA per drive, ninth in the country on offense. They're a really good team, right? And by every metric, by the film, everything, it's just easier for me to explain the metric to you. But by every metric, they're a really good offense. Every Lane Kiffin offense is going to be a really good offense, right? Duh. It's Ole Miss. It's Lane Kiffin. They're going to be really good. But Florida has to find a way to make Ole Miss play ugly football. And I mean ugly. And that is a problem, right? This is a really good offense. They're what? They're 93rd percentile in EPA per play. 77th percentile on havoc is actually one of their worst areas. So you got to kind of attack there. But there's ways to attack them. There's ways to figure out how to frustrate them. And I think the Florida's defensive approach is kind of the way to do it. So I think that there's that benefit of kind of bend, don't break, play good coverage, and try to generate coverage sacks, which is how Florida's pass rush has been getting it done. Play good coverage on the back end, play disguised coverages on the back end, disguise your pressure package, disguise your pass rush plan, and just hope that you get there before anybody is able to make a read. In this case, it's Jackson Dart. He is not pressured often. He is not sacked often. But you look at the games that they lost, LSU and Kentucky, and the similarity there is that both of those schools got to Jackson Dart, not sacking him a ton, but getting to him and just stymieing the offense in that way. They have one of the more consistent rushing attacks in the conference. Like, they like to throw the ball more than they like to run the ball, but when they run the ball, they're pretty good. That's a big difference, by the way, between Ole Miss's offense in terms of just productivity and LSU's offense, is that LSU would try to run the ball sometimes, and it would very rarely work out. LSU or Ole Miss, they generate chunk plays and they generate consistent gains on the ground. And that is a little bit of a recipe for disaster, especially if you have guys dropping back. Like if we say, hey, George Gumps is dropping in coverage on this play, right? Which he does do. If he starts taking a step back and that left tackle comes rearing down, he's not going to be able to recover effectively there. But I mean, Ole Miss's run game has been very effective. Jackson Dart has been a part of it, and he's picking up first down. Like Jackson Dart he's not a huge runner. Like that's not going to be why NFL teams are like, oh, you know what? We should take this guy. But he picks up first downs on a lot of his carries. He's got the second most first downs picked up by any of the ball carriers. He does that a lot. He does that consistently. He picks up the key first downs that you need to pick up, which is, by the way, all I ask for from a QB. Like whether you're DJ Lagway, Graham Mertz, like, hey, if you can pick up a first down with your legs, do it. Like you need to be able to go trigger and just pick up the first down and extend the drive. So you've got an offensive line that doesn't allow a lot of pressures, doesn't allow a lot of sacks. You've got an offensive line that gets pretty decent movement in the run game. There's a reason that all of their running backs excel, right? It's that. But you've got to make them play ugly. You've got to just get gritty. And Jack Pyburn's the guy that we talk about with this, right? Like Jack Pyburn's the one that's like, oh, like I'm going to be the hammer. I'm going to hit you and you're going to hurt a lot more than I'm going to hurt. You watch him defending the run and it's just like a car crash every time he collides with a lineman. It's great. Like you've got to figure out ways to make this ugly. They don't make a lot of mistakes, right? Like I said, they're clean. Jackson Dart's only thrown 4 picks, which I will say, granted, I'd say gotten away with a couple that probably should have been picked off, but weren't. But every quarterback does, right? I mean, DJ Lagway last week had 2 or 3 should have been picks that weren't picks. Happens. But like you look at, and it's not that the only time they lose is where he throws pick. I mean, he threw 1 pick and their 2 losses combined. It's not like he throws a ton of picks, doesn't have those errors. 6 fumbles on the year from the entire team, 3 of them being strip sacks on Jackson Dart. You've got to try to make him make some mistakes, which I do think you can do, by the way, with disguised coverages. Like I think that's an advantage that Florida may have, just in terms of when they work with those RPOs. If you've got someone drop it back and he's not paying attention or he's not properly making the read, you're going to be able to hopefully force some mistakes, force an error there, screw him up a little bit, which, by the way, very interested to see how both defensive sides coach this game, considering they're so similar and they know each other so well. I'm interested to see which defense breaks first, because that could break the whole game open. There's obviously Trey Harris, but I feel like with Trey Harris on this Ole Miss offense, I look at the game last week against LSU and how Deshaun Johnson played and how Florida's secondary shut down Kyron Lacy. And I'm like, all right, well, I think you can do that with Trey. I think Trey Harris is better than Kyron Lacy, but I think you can do that. It's about taking away that first read, because that's another thing with Jackson Dart. I don't think he does a great job when it's really needing to read the full field, really needing to make multiple reads. I don't think he's done a good job there this year. Like, yeah, he's got numbers. He's got gaudy stats. Sure, he's putting up numbers. He's not putting the ball in harm's way a ton. But I really don't think he's played awesome this year against their good teams. Like, sure, he had, I think, 5 or 6 touchdowns against Furman. He had 6 against Arkansas. But, like, Oklahoma, he wasn't going off. LSU, he didn't go off. Georgia, he didn't go off. Georgia, he was banged up, granted, but he was picking up first downs with his legs, but he wasn't going off. Like, he wasn't doing anything incredible. And I think that for an offense that's built around him, if you can make him make some mistakes, which I do think is possible, then I think that's your path to victory, at least for muddying up their offensive plan. Florida Gators offense needs the offensive line to play really well. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Gators. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. So here's how it works. I will need it this weekend. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. So drink it before you start drinking alcohol. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. And I've told you before, like, I use it. It's beautiful. I love it. You drink it, you drink water, you drink responsibly. Don't just binge like an animal, and you enjoy it tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. And if you like making money, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Probably not Thursday Night Football, right? Those don't usually go well. But there's like I said, there's money to be made in them, but responsibly, right? Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. To wrap up today's episode of Locked On Gators, by the way, just a reminder that tomorrow after the Ole Miss game, we might be going live, might not. I will need to see how the internet is when I get to the place I'm staying, which I'll probably send out a little notification if I think we'll be able to go live or not. But the Florida Gators offensive line needs to absolutely excel in this game. You're facing the best defensive line that you've faced this season, and you're facing what I think is the best defensive line in the country right now. I mean, they've just been dominating everyone up front. They've been causing havoc for every offensive line that they faced almost. I mean, when you look at the metrics, their havoc percentage is in terms of sacks, forced fumbles, tackles for a loss, 99th percentile. They get a sack, a forced fumble, a tackle for loss on 16.4% of plays. That's really good. They force you into third and longs on average 8.53 yards. So it's on average either 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9. And then they get to pin their ears back and get after you, right? They are a really good defensive line, really good defensive front. They don't give much in the ground game. They cause havoc. And I've said this yesterday on the crossover that I look at the way their defensive line attacks everything, similar to how Gerald Chapman teaches this defensive line with the Florida Gators to attack everything of you are defending the run on your way to the quarterback. That's just how I think of it, right? Like their primary goal is to get pressures. Suntarine Perkins has 39 pressures. Princely Umanmielen has 37 pressures. Jared Ivey has 31 pressures. J.J. Pegues has 28 pressures. Walter Nolan has 25 pressures. Chris Paul Jr. has 23 pressures. They've got 6 guys with 23 pressures or more this season alone, right? Florida, by the way, has 0. They've got 6. This is a really good defensive line. And it's not just rushing the passer. They defend the run as well. They make a lot of plays. The offensive line needs to play lights out. You need to create push in the run game. Like the way that I see it against Ole Miss is Ole Miss on average, like their line yards allowed, which is how much work the line is doing there, creates on average 1.4 yards back, right? So if your Florida Gators and your offensive line gives you on average a yard to a yard and a half, like let's play conservative with the numbers here. They give you a yard to a yard and a half, somewhere in between there on every run. They give the backs a clean yard, yard and a half, and then it's up to the running backs. I have faith in the Florida Gators running backs to keep up, like all of the Florida Gators running backs average 3 yards after contact per carry. That's not surprising, right? Jaden Ball's physical. Jacoby Jackson's physical. Montrell Johnson's physical. They're all physical running backs. If your offensive line can give you a yard to a yard and a half, and your running backs can give you their average of 3 yards after contact per carry, that's between 4 and 4.5 yards per carry. That's good enough. Like, I don't think any of us Like, obviously, yes, on the course of the season, you want your running backs to have, 5 yards per carry. In college, probably a little bit more than that. But against an Ole Miss defense that's really good, I don't think any of us would go, you know what? Yeah, 4.5 yards per carry just doesn't cut it for me. Just on average, I think most of us would take that as a baseline, by the way. Like, I'm being conservative with these numbers. I think that this Florida Gators offensive line can give you a little bit more push than that. I think these Florida Gators running backs can give you maybe a little bit more than their average yards after contact. Like, I'm trying to be conservative with these numbers and limiting these expectations a little bit, but I don't think anybody as a baseline would turn down 4.5 yards per carry against Ole Miss. Like that would be worse than the backs usually average. Which, by the way, means that usually your offensive line's actually giving you a little bit more than 1.5 yards per carry. Like, you can do this and make it work, right? You can do this and make it effective and attack this Ole Miss defense. Like, your offensive line is where you need to win, though, because that's where the Ole Miss defense wins. I think their secondary is pretty good. I think their linebacker room is pretty good, but their defensive line is where they win. So in order to beat them, you need to win there. And look at their losses, by the way. Look at what happened in their losses. I'm not even trying to hype up Princely when I talk about this. So I'm sorry. I'm not hyping him up here. I'm just saying he is without a doubt one of their best defensive players. Without a doubt, one of their best defensive linemen. Didn't play against LSU. Got hurt against Kentucky. Like, that's the only time they've lost is when this defensive lines have not been fully healthy. That's it. They're a really good defensive line. And that's how you have to win, though, is push them back. Push them back. He got hurt against Kentucky, and I think he played 1 snap against LSU. You've got to win in the trenches. They're a really good defensive line, factually. I do think this offensive line can challenge them, but you've got to be able to push them back. And yeah, like I've said, this defensive line has never lost when fully healthy. The same way we go, DJ Lagway's never lost a game he started and finished. You could say the same thing for this defensive line. They've never lost a game where they were healthy from start to finish. Hasn't happened. So yeah, your offensive line needs to pick up there. But also the way that their defensive line wins and is the strength of their defense, they've got 46 sacks this year, which just saying the number doesn't mean anything, right? Second place in the country is 40 sacks. And it's Boise State, who is constantly leading, so constantly getting pass rush opportunities, and playing Group of 5 football, which they are at the top of the Group of 5. So there's a lot of bad in the Group of 5, right? So second place in the country is 40 sacks. Second place in the SEC has 35 sacks. It's South Carolina, who I think we can all agree has a really good pass rush. But Ole Miss gaps them by a lot. And part of that is, yes, they're leading, so they have more opportunities. But I don't want to hear crap about strength of schedule, because I know every time I talk about Ole Miss anything, people go, but their strength of schedule early in the year. That doesn't matter. It doesn't. Like, you can't tell me crap about strength of schedule. If you took only Ole Miss's sacks against SEC, in the conference, only sacks against SEC teams, and you compared it to every single team in the country with their full schedule, Ole Miss has the same number of sacks in SEC play as South Carolina, 35 sacks, second in the SEC, has in the entire season, including the Cupcakes. That's it. The same number of sacks in that time. Like, this is and I'm not trying to just hype up this defensive line that much, but like, this is where you need to win offensively. I think that you can get pushed in the run game. I do. I think that you could push back Centurion Perkins. I think you could push back Princely Umanmielen. I think you got to double team Walter Nolan a lot. I think you can get JJ Pegway back. Yeah. But then in the pass game, I expect to see Hayden Hansen in pass protection. I hope we see him in pass protection. I expect to see quick passes, maybe I don't want to see too many running back screens where offensive linemen are pulling, because the way that Ole Miss's pass rush can just get to you in a second, like Suntarine Perkins is what it's like a 4.35 or something like that. They get to you quick. So I don't want to see you giving them any free runs by just creating screens there. But your offensive line needs to hold up for DJ, and they need to create rushing lanes, or at least just muddy things up. Like even if it's not a rushing lane, I can respect a Montrell, Jacoby, Jaden just going, hey, offensive line's moving. I'm going to go right behind him, put my hand on his back, and push two, and we're going to pick up whatever we can pick up and move. I think you can do that. You need to do it to win the game. If you don't do it, it's burn. It's as simple as that. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow at some point, maybe immediately after the game, maybe a little bit after the game. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.